"Sign the papers, Charlotte. I'm done dragging dead weight." Those were the last words Ethan spoke to his wife of 5 years, handing her divorce papers while she sat in a sterile hospital waiting room, praying for her dying mother. He walked away with a younger, wealthier woman on his arm, convinced he was upgrading his life. He had no idea that the woman he was abandoning was the sole heir to the Kensington global portfolio, a real estate empire worth $1.3 billion. He wasn't just walking away from a marriage, he was walking away from the very fortune he had spent his entire ruthless career chasing. By the time he realized the truth, it wouldn't just be a divorce. It would be his destruction. Rain battered the windows of St. Jude's Medical Center in downtown Seattle, blurring the city lights into streaks of gray and charcoal. Inside the waiting room on the 4th floor, the fluorescent lights hummed with an irritating buzz that seemed to drill directly into Charlotte's skull. She sat hunched over in a plastic chair, her knuckles white as she gripped a crumpled styrofoam cup of cold coffee. Charlotte looked nothing like a woman who would soon hold the keys to the city. Her coat was threadbare, bought second-hand 3 winters ago. Her boots were scuffed, and dark circles bruised the skin beneath her eyes. For the last 6 months, her life had been a singular, suffocating tunnel of medical bills, double shifts at a diner, and watching her mother, Martha, fade away in the ICU down the hall. The elevator doors pinged open. Charlotte didn't look up until she heard the familiar, sharp click of Italian leather shoes approaching. She knew that stride. It was impatient, purposeful, and entirely devoid of empathy. "Ethan," she whispered, standing up, relief washing over her momentarily. "You came. I didn't think you'd make it. The doctor said Mom might not make it through the night, and I'm not here for your mother, Charlotte," Ethan cut in. His voice was dry, professional, as if he were closing a deal on a foreclosure rather than speaking to his wife. Ethan stood before her, immaculate in a tailored navy suit that cost more than Charlotte made in 3 months. He checked his watch, a Rolex Submariner she had scrimped and saved for 2 years to buy him for his promotion at Apex Realty. "Then, why are you here?" Charlotte asked, her stomach tightening. Ethan reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick manila envelope. He slapped it against her chest. Charlotte instinctively grabbed it. "Divorce papers," Ethan said. "I've already signed. You just need to sign on the dotted line on page 12. I've been generous. I'm letting you keep the debt from your mother's treatments. I'm taking the car and the apartment lease." Charlotte felt the air leave the room. "What?" "Ethan, please. Not now. Mum is dying. I can't process this right now. We promised, for better or worse. We promised that when we had a future," Ethan sneered, adjusting his silk tie. "But let's be honest. You're an anchor, Charlotte. You have no ambition. You're drowning in debt. And frankly, you're embarrassing to be seen with. I'm a senior partner at Apex now. I need someone who fits the part. Someone with pedigree." Before Charlotte could respond, the elevator pinged again. A woman stepped out. She was stunning, wrapped in a white cashmere coat, her blonde hair perfectly blown out. It was Sophia Vanguard, the daughter of the CEO of Apex Realty, the very firm Ethan worked for. Sophia walked over, linking her arm through Ethan's, looking at Charlotte as if she were a stain on the carpet. "Is it done, babe?" Sophia asked, checking her perfectly manicured nails. "Daddy is waiting for us at Le Bernardin. We can't be late." "Almost," Ethan said, his voice softening for Sophia before hardening again as he looked at Charlotte. "Sign them, Charlotte. Don't make this ugly. You have nothing to offer me. You never did." Charlotte looked from the envelope to the man she had supported while he studied for his real estate license, the man she had cooked for, the man she had loved through his failures. You're leaving me for her? Charlotte asked, her voice trembling. Because she's rich? Because she's a winner, Ethan corrected coldly. And you, Charlotte, are a born loser. Your father was a nobody who ran off. Your mother is a waitress, and you'll never be anything more than what you are right now. Pathetic. Sophia giggled, a sharp, cruel sound. Come on, Ethan. She smells like disinfectant and poverty. Let's go. Ethan turned his back on her without a second glance. Mail the papers to my office by Monday, or I'll have you evicted from the apartment by Tuesday. They walked away, the sound of their laughter echoing down the sterile corridor. Charlotte stood frozen, the envelope heavy in her hands. The betrayal was so absolute, so physical, that she felt like she had been gutted. 10 minutes later, a nurse came out of the ICU. Her face was somber. Mrs. Reynolds, the nurse asked gently. It's your mother. I'm so sorry. Charlotte dropped the divorce papers on the floor. In the span of 20 minutes, she had lost her husband, her home, and the only person who had ever truly loved her. She sank to her knees on the cold linoleum, sobbing until her throat burned, completely unaware that the worst day of her life was merely the prologue to a destiny she couldn't possibly imagine. 3 days later, the funeral was a quiet, desolate affair. The rain hadn't stopped. It felt as if the Seattle sky was mourning alongside her. Only 3 people stood by the grave: Charlotte, her elderly neighbor Mrs. Higgins, and the priest. Ethan didn't come. He hadn't even sent a text. Charlotte stood in the mud, wearing her only black dress, watching the casket get lowered into the wet earth. She was 26 years old, currently homeless, sleeping on Mrs. Higgins's couch, divorced and buried under $80,000 of medical debt. She had $0 in her bank account. As the priest finished his final prayer and walked away, a black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up to the curb of the dilapidated cemetery. It was out of place among the cracked tombstones and overgrown weeds, a shark swimming in a pond. A chauffeur stepped out, opened an umbrella, and opened the rear door. An older man emerged. He was tall, silver-haired, leaning on a cane with a handle carved from ivory. He wore a suit that whispered old money, bespoke, timeless, intimidating. He navigated the muddy grass carefully, stopping a few feet from Charlotte. Charlotte rose, the man said. His voice was deep, gravelly, but not unkind. Charlotte wiped her eyes, stepping back defensively. Who are you? I don't have any money for bills if you're a collector. The man offered a faint, sad smile. I am not here to collect, my dear. I am here to deliver. My name is Arthur Penhaligon. I am the senior executor of the Kensington estate. Charlotte frowned. Kensington? I don't know any Kensingtons. No, Arthur sighed, looking at the grave of Charlotte's mother. You wouldn't? Martha kept her promise to him, even to the end. She was a woman of immense pride. You knew my mother? I knew the man she fell in love with 30 years ago, Arthur said. A man she left because she refused to live in a golden cage. She wanted a simple life. She didn't want you corrupted by the weight of his legacy. Charlotte shook her head. I don't understand. My father was a mechanic. He died before I was born. That's what Mum told me. A protective lie, Arthur said. He reached into his coat and pulled out a photograph. It was old, grainy, showing a young Martha laughing on a yacht, standing next to a man with piercing blue eyes, the exact same eyes Charlotte saw in the mirror every morning. Your father was Magnus Kensington, Arthur stated, the real estate tycoon, the man who built half of Manhattan and a third of London. He passed away 2 weeks ago in Zurich. He had no other children, no other heirs. The wind howled, whipping Charlotte's hair across her face. Magnus Kensington, the billionaire. The same, Arthur confirmed. He spent years trying to find you, but Martha was very good at disappearing. It was only when she was admitted to the hospital under her maiden name that our private investigators flagged the file. But by then, Magnus was already gone. Arthur stepped closer, ignoring the mud splattering his trousers. Charlotte, Magnus left a will. It is ironclad. He left everything to his only surviving bloodline. Charlotte laughed, a dry, hysterical sound. Everything? What does that mean? A house? Some stocks? Arthur's expression remained serious. The Kensington Global Portfolio includes 34 skyscrapers in New York, the Kensington hotel chain across Europe, retail complexes in Dubai, and significant land holdings here in Seattle, including the Apex Tower. Charlotte froze. The Apex Tower, where Apex Realty is headquartered. We own the building, Arthur corrected gently. They are merely tenants, along with assets totaling approximately $1.3 billion after taxes. The world tilted on its axis. Charlotte grabbed Mrs. Higgins's arm to steady herself. "Why are you telling me this now?" Charlotte whispered. "Because the wolves are circling," Arthur said, his eyes hardening. "When a man like Magnus dies, the board of directors, the competitors, they all want a piece of the carcass. They think the empire is heirless. They are planning to dissolve the company, sell off the assets, and fill their own pockets. We need you, Charlotte. You are the majority shareholder. You are the owner." "I'm a waitress," Charlotte stammered. "I dropped out of college to pay for Mum's chemo. I don't know how to run an empire. My ex-husband, just left me because I was a loser." Arthur looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the grief, yes, but he also saw the steel in her spine that had kept her standing through the rain. "Then you have two choices," Arthur said, holding out a business card embossed with gold leaf. "You can walk away, take a small cash settlement, and let them dismantle your father's legacy. Or you can get in the car. I will teach you. I will protect you. And you can prove to everyone, including this ex-husband of yours, exactly who you really are." Charlotte looked at the grave. She thought of Ethan's sneer. "You're a born loser." She thought of Sophia's pitying laugh. "She smells like poverty." She looked at Arthur. "If I go with you, does anyone have to know?" At first, Arthur smiled, a sharp glint in his eye. "An anonymous owner, a silent partner? It is a powerful strategy. In war, the element of surprise is everything." Charlotte took a deep breath. She reached down, grabbed a handful of wet earth, and placed it on her mother's coffin. "Goodbye, Mum. I promise I won't let them break me." She turned to Arthur. "Open the car door, Arthur." The Swiss Alps were silent, save for the crackling of the fireplace in the library of the Chalet Edelweiss. For 6 months, this secluded fortress had been Charlotte's entire world. She had vanished from Seattle, leaving no forwarding address, no social media footprint, and no trace of the weeping girl in the hospital waiting room. Arthur Penhaligon sat in a leather wingback chair, sipping an aged cognac. Opposite him sat Charlotte. The transformation was not merely physical, though that was striking enough. The malnourished frame was now healthy and toned, the result of a rigorous regimen with a private trainer. Her hair, once limp and dull, was now a glossy, rich chestnut, cut in a sharp, asymmetrical bob that screamed authority. But the real change was in her eyes. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating intelligence. "Review the quarterly earnings for the Manhattan commercial sector," Arthur commanded, not looking up from his newspaper. "Revenue is down 2.4% due to the vacancy in the Midtown sector." Charlotte replied instantly, her voice steady. "However, the London portfolio has outperformed projections by 11%, due to the new luxury retail contracts. Overall, the Kensington estate is up 6% this fiscal year. But we have a bleeder. Arthur lowered the paper. Identify it. The Apex Tower in Seattle, Charlotte said, tapping the tablet in her lap. The primary tenant, Apex Realty, is underperforming. They've missed their maintenance surcharges for 2 consecutive quarters. Their lease is up for renewal in 30 days. They are banking on an automatic renewal clause, but I found a loophole in the original contract drawn up by my father in 1998. Arthur smiled, a genuine expression of pride. The good standing clause. Exactly, Charlotte said, standing up and walking to the window to look out at the snow. Clause 14B. The tenant must maintain a certain liquidity ratio and adhere to all maintenance schedules to qualify for automatic renewal. Apex hasn't. That means the lease is voidable. We can evict them, or we can squeeze them. Charlotte turned, her silhouette framed by the white mountains. We can renegotiate the terms, triple the rent, demand board oversight. We can break them. Arthur nodded slowly. And who is the lead broker for the Apex account? Charlotte didn't blink. Ethan Reynolds. Meanwhile, in Seattle, the rain was just as relentless as it had been 6 months ago. Ethan Reynolds sat in his corner office on the 40th floor of the Apex Tower, loosening his tie. The view was spectacular, overlooking the Puget Sound, but Ethan was too nauseous to enjoy it. His life, which was supposed to be a continuous ascent to glory, had hit turbulence. "You told me the Kensington renewal was a lock," barked Robert Vanguard, the CEO of Apex Realty and Sophia's father. He was a bull of a man, red-faced and perpetually angry. He paced around Ethan's office, chewing on an unlit cigar. "It is a lock, Robert," Ethan lied, sweating slightly. "The Kensingtons are absentee landlords. The old man, Magnus, died in Europe. The estate is probably in probate hell. They won't notice a few missed maintenance fees. They'll auto-renew. They always do." "They better," Robert growled, slamming a fist on Ethan's mahogany desk. "Because if we lose this building, we lose our headquarters. We lose our prestige. And if that happens, Ethan, you won't just lose your job. You'll lose Sophia. I don't let my daughter marry failures." Ethan swallowed hard. His marriage to Sophia, or rather, their engagement, as the divorce from Charlotte had only just been finalized, was not the fairy tale he had envisioned. Sophia was expensive, obscenely so. She demanded weekly shopping sprees at Nordstrom and vacations to St. Bart's. Ethan was drowning in credit card debt, trying to keep up with the Vanguard lifestyle. He needed his quarterly bonus. He needed this lease renewal. "I'll handle it," Ethan said, projecting a confidence he didn't feel. "I sent the renewal papers to their legal team in Zurich last week. It's just a formality." Just then, his intercom buzzed. It was his secretary, her voice trembling. "Mr. Reynolds, you have a priority courier package. It's marked urgent, from Kensington Global Holdings." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He snatched the phone. "Send it in." A minute later, he was tearing open the thick envelope. He scanned the document, his face draining of color. "What is it?" Robert demanded. They rejected the renewal," Ethan whispered, his hands shaking. "They're invoking Clause 14B. They say we're in breach of contract." "Who is they?" Robert shouted. Ethan flipped to the last page. It's signed by a proxy, the office of the CEO. But there's a note. Ethan read the handwritten note, clipped to the document. It was written in elegant, sharp cursive. "Mr. Reynolds, the automatic renewal is denied. The Kensington estate requires a face-to-face renegotiation if Apex Realty wishes to remain in our building. A representative will be at your offices on Monday at 9 a.m. sharp Do not be late. Monday, Robert Vanguard hissed. You fix this, Ethan. You get on your knees and beg if you have to. If we lose this lease, you're finished. Ethan stared at the note. He didn't know why, but the handwriting looked vaguely familiar, like a ghost from a past life he had tried to burn. Monday morning arrived with a vengeance. The atmosphere inside the Apex Realty boardroom was suffocating. Robert Vanguard sat at the head of the table, flanked by his legal team. Ethan sat to his right, fidgeting with his Montblanc pen. Sophia was there too, technically as the director of marketing, though she spent most of the meeting scrolling through Instagram on her phone. Who are we expecting? Sophia asked, popping her gum. Some old Swiss banker. We don't know, Ethan snapped, his nerves fraying. They didn't give a name, just a representative. Relax, babe, Sophia rolled her eyes. Daddy will bully them into submission. We always win. At exactly 9 a.m., the heavy oak doors of the boardroom swung open. The room went silent. It wasn't an old Swiss banker. First came 2 bodyguards, massive men in black suits who took positions by the door. Then came Arthur Penhaligon, leaning on his ivory-handled cane, looking every bit the seasoned consigliere. And then she walked in. She wore a custom-tailored white suit by Alexander McQueen that fit her like armor. Her heels, red-bottomed Christian Louboutins, clicked rhythmically against the floorboards, a sound of impending judgment. She carried a sleek leather portfolio and wore oversized sunglasses, which she didn't remove immediately. Ethan frowned. The woman's silhouette was familiar, but the aura was alien. This woman radiated power. She sucked the oxygen out of the room just by entering it. Robert Vanguard stood up, putting on his best fake smile. Welcome, welcome. I'm Robert Vanguard. We expected, well, someone from the Zurich office. Arthur spoke first. I am Arthur Penhaligon, executor of the estate. And this, he gestured to the woman in white, is the chairwoman and majority owner of Kensington Global. Ethan's jaw dropped. The owner? A woman? The woman reached up and slowly removed her sunglasses. Ethan stopped breathing. The eyes were the same. The nose was the same. But everything else was different. The skin was luminous, the makeup flawless, the posture regal. It was Charlotte. But it couldn't be Charlotte. Charlotte was a waitress who bought her clothes at Goodwill. Charlotte was the woman who cried over coupons. This woman looked like she owned the Federal Reserve. Hello, Ethan, Charlotte said. Her voice was cool, smooth, and laced with a deadly calm. It's been a while. A pin drop could have been heard in the room. Shh. Charlotte, Ethan stammered, standing up so abruptly his chair tipped over. What are you doing here? How did you get in here? Sophia looked up from her phone, her mouth hanging open. The ex-wife? You're kidding me. Ethan, why is your charity case ex-wife crashing our meeting? Sophia turned to the bodyguards. Escort her out. This is a private meeting for serious business people, not for begging exes. Sit down, Sophia, Charlotte said. She didn't shout. She didn't have to. The command cracked like a whip across the room. Charlotte walked to the head of the table, the opposite end from Robert, and placed her portfolio on the glass surface. I am not here to beg, Charlotte said, her gaze sliding over Ethan like he was a bug on a windshield. I am here because I own this building, Sophia. I own the ground you are standing on. I own the roof over your head. And as of this morning, I own the debt your father's company just defaulted on. Robert Vanguard turned a shade of purple. What is the meaning of this? You're Ethan's ex? The waitress? I am Charlotte Kensington, she corrected, her voice steel. Daughter of Magnus Kensington. and I am currently deciding whether to evict Apex Realty and turn this floor into a gym for my staff, or if I should let you stay, for a price." Ethan felt the room spinning. "Kensington. But your mother? She was nobody." "My mother was a saint who protected me from vipers like you," Charlotte said, her eyes finally locking onto Ethan's. "You called me a loser, Ethan. You said I had no ambition. You said I was a dead weight." She leaned forward, placing her hands on the table. "Well, the dead weight just bought your mortgage. So, gentlemen, and Sophia, let's negotiate." Robert Vanguard looked from Ethan to Charlotte, realizing the gravity of the situation. He didn't care about their personal history. He cared about the bottom line. He turned on Ethan instantly. "You knew?" Robert roared at Ethan. "You knew she was a Kensington and you divorced her?" "I didn't know," Ethan pleaded, his voice cracking. "She never told me. She was broke." "Ignorance is not a defense in business, Mr. Reynolds," Arthur interjected smoothly. "It is merely a liability." Charlotte took a seat, crossing her legs elegantly. She opened a folder. "Here is the situation. Apex Realty is currently paying $40 per square foot. The market rate is $65. However, given the distress you caused my previous administration, the new rate will be $85 per square foot, non-negotiable." "That's robbery," Robert shouted. "That will bankrupt us." "Then vacate by Friday," Charlotte said, checking her watch, a Patek Philippe that cost more than Ethan's car. "I have a waiting list of tech firms dying for this view. Amazon is looking for more space. I could call them right now." She pulled out her phone. "Wait!" Ethan yelled. He looked desperate. He looked small. "Charlotte, please, you can't do this. This is personal. You're doing this for revenge." Charlotte paused. She looked at him with a mixture of pity and amusement. "Revenge?" she asked softly. "Ethan, you overestimate your importance. This isn't revenge. This is just business. You're an underperforming asset, and I'm cleaning house." She turned to Robert. "You have 5 minutes to sign the new lease at $85 a square foot with a 5-year lock-in. Or you get out. Clock is ticking." Ethan looked at Sophia, hoping for support. Sophia looked at him with pure disgust. "You idiot!" Sophia hissed at Ethan. "You let $1 billion walk out the door because you didn't like her shoes?" Ethan looked back at Charlotte. For the first time, he realized that the woman he had discarded was not just out of his league. She was playing a completely different game, and he had just lost everything. The fallout from the boardroom meeting was catastrophic for Ethan. Robert Vanguard signed the new lease. He had no choice. But the financial strain on Apex Realty was immediate. The company's stock dipped, and the board of directors was demanding answers. Robert placed the blame squarely on Ethan's shoulders. "You have 1 month to fix this mess," Robert had snarled, stripping Ethan of his senior partner title and demoting him to a probationary associate. "Find a way to void that lease, or find a new job, and stay away from my daughter until you're useful again." Ethan was desperate. He had lost his status, his money was drying up, and Sophia was refusing to return his calls. He sat in his cramped new office, a glorified cubicle, staring at a picture of Charlotte from their wedding day. He didn't see a woman he missed. He saw a winning lottery ticket he had thrown in the trash. He decided to try the one tactic that had always worked on Charlotte before: emotional manipulation. He waited for her outside the Kensington Global headquarters that evening. It was pouring rain again, a grim reflection of his mood. When Charlotte emerged, flanked by her security team, Ethan rushed forward, soaking wet, looking intentionally pathetic. "Charlotte, please, just 2 minutes!" he shouted over the thunder. One of the bodyguards stepped forward to intercept, but Charlotte raised a gloved hand. She signaled for the guard to stand down. She held a black umbrella, looking dry, warm, and untouchable. "You have 60 seconds, Ethan," she said indifferently. "Charlotte, I made a mistake," Ethan pleaded, water dripping from his nose. "I was pressured by Robert. I was confused. But seeing you today, it reminded me of who we were. We were a team. I still love you, Char. I know I hurt you. But we can fix this. We can run this empire together. You need someone you trust. Someone who knows you." Charlotte stared at him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, Ethan thought he saw a flicker of the old, soft Charlotte. He took a step closer, encouraged. "I can leave Apex," he whispered. "I can come work for you. We can be a power couple. Just like we planned." Charlotte laughed. It was a dark, genuine laugh that sent a chill down Ethan's spine. "You really are delusional," she said, shaking her head. "You think I need you to run my father's empire? You couldn't even manage a household budget without my tips from the diner. And as for trust, I trust the snake in the grass more than I trust you. At least the snake doesn't pretend to be my husband." She stepped into her waiting limousine. As the window rolled up, she offered one final strike. "Save your breath, Ethan. You're going to need it when I foreclose on your condo next week. I bought that debt too." The car sped away, splashing mud onto Ethan's trousers. Humiliated and enraged, Ethan went to the only place he had left, Sophia's penthouse. He banged on the door until she answered, holding a glass of wine, looking bored. "I'm not in the mood, Ethan," she sighed. "I have a plan," Ethan said, pushing past her into the apartment. "She won't take me back. She's coming for us, Sophia. She's going to destroy your father's company and ruin your inheritance just for sport. We have to stop her." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "How? She's a billionaire. We're ants." "She's a fraud," Ethan lied, his mind racing to fabricate a narrative. "Think about it. Her mother was a nobody. Suddenly she shows up with a will from Magnus Kensington. It's too convenient. I know Charlotte. She's capable of lying. If we can prove she falsified her identity, or that the will is a fake, the estate freezes. The lease becomes void." Sophia's eyes lit up. If the will is contested, the assets are frozen for years. Apex would be off the hook. "Exactly," Ethan grinned, a manic look in his eyes. "And I know a guy, a forensic accountant who owes me a favor. We dig into her mother's past. We find the dirt. And we expose her." "When?" Sophia asked. "Saturday," Ethan said. "The Kensington Foundation Gala. She's doing her big public reveal to the press. All the major networks will be there. We don't just sue her, we destroy her reputation on live television." The grand ballroom of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel had been transformed into a glittering palace of old-world wealth. Crystal chandeliers, massive and dripping with light, hung above a sea of white roses and black tie attire. This was the Kensington Foundation Gala, the social event of the decade. But to the elite of the Pacific Northwest, it was something far more significant. It was a coronation. Charlotte stood on the mezzanine balcony, hidden behind a velvet curtain, watching the guests arrive below. Senators, tech moguls, and media tycoons mingled with sharks from the finance sector. They were all there for one reason: to see the mysterious woman who had inherited the empire. Charlotte smoothed the fabric of her gown. It was a midnight blue velvet masterpiece that hugged her frame, paired with a diamond necklace that had once belonged to European royalty. She looked every inch the billionaire heiress, but beneath the diamonds, her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "You look ready for war," Arthur Penhaligon said, stepping up beside her. He looked regal in his tuxedo, though his eyes remained vigilant, scanning the room like the seasoned protector he was. "I feel like I'm walking into a gladiator pit," Charlotte admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "They're all waiting to see if I stumble. They want to know if the rumors are true, if I'm just a lucky waitress or a real player." "Let them look," Arthur said, handing her a glass of water. "Tonight you take the throne. The cameras are ready. CNN, BBC, and Fox have positioned their crews. This is your moment, Charlotte. Do not blink." Charlotte took a deep breath, steeling herself. She thought of her mother, who had spent her life hiding from this world to protect her daughter. Now, Charlotte was stepping into the center of it to protect her mother's memory. "Let's get it over with," she said. As she descended the grand staircase, the murmur of the crowd died down instantly. A hush fell over the room, followed by the blinding pop of camera flashes. She moved through the crowd with a practiced grace she hadn't possessed 6 months ago, shaking hands, smiling, and playing the part of the benevolent queen. She felt powerful. She felt real. But the piece was a meticulously constructed illusion, and it was about to be shattered. Just as Charlotte took the stage and approached the podium to give her keynote address, a violent commotion erupted near the main entrance. The heavy double doors were shoved open with a force that rattled the hinges. Security guards stumbled back, caught off guard by the intrusion. Ethan Reynolds strode into the ballroom, looking like a man possessed. He wore a tuxedo that hung loosely on his frame. He had lost significant weight in the last month due to stress, and his hair was slightly disheveled. Beside him was Sophia Vanguard, clutching a thick stack of legal documents to her chest like a shield. Her eyes were wide, manic, and gleaming with malicious triumph. They marched down the center aisle, cutting through the crowd. A confused ripple of whispers followed them. "Stop the applause!" Ethan shouted, his voice cracking but echoing loudly off the high, vaulted ceilings. He scrambled up the steps to the stage, grabbing a microphone from a stunned MC. "You are all applauding a criminal!" The room gasped. It was a collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen out of the ballroom. The cameras, sensing blood in the water, pivoted instantly from Charlotte to Ethan. Arthur stepped forward from the wings, signaling for the security team to intervene, but Charlotte raised a gloved hand. She held her ground at the podium, her expression unreadable. "Let him speak," Charlotte commanded, her voice amplified by her own microphone. It was calm, steady, and cut through the tension like a knife. "I want everyone to see this." Ethan turned to the crowd, energized by the attention. He pointed a shaking finger at Charlotte. "You think you know this woman? You think she's the lost daughter of Magnus Kensington? It's a lie. This woman is not Charlotte Kensington. Her name is Charlotte Reynolds, and she is a con artist." The whispers turned into audible murmurs. The crowd was fickle. They loved a hero, but they loved a scandal even more. "She is a waitress," Ethan yelled, spitting the word like a curse. "A broke, desperate waitress who tricked an old man's estate. Her mother, Martha, was a mentally unstable woman with an obsession with Magnus Kensington. She faked the DNA test." Sophia stepped up beside him, waving the sheaf of papers in the air for the cameras. "We have proof!" she shrieked, her voice shrill. "We have a sworn affidavit from a clinic in Mexico stating that Martha purchased forged genetic markers. This woman is a fraud attempting to steal $1 billion legacy. She doesn't belong here." Ethan smirked, seeing the doubt creeping into the eyes of the audience. He saw the board members exchanging worried glances. He felt the rush of victory. This was it. He had won. He had destroyed her credibility on live television. "She belongs in jail," Ethan declared, turning to face Charlotte, expecting to see her crumble. He expected tears. He expected the scared, pleading girl he had left in the hospital waiting room. Instead, Charlotte began to clap. It was a slow, rhythmic sound. Clap, clap, clap. The sound was jarring in the silence. Charlotte looked at him, not with fear, but with a mixture of pity and amusement. She leaned into the microphone. "Are you finished, Ethan?" she asked softly. Ethan faltered, his smile slipping. "The game is up, Charlotte. Step down before you embarrass yourself further." "Oh, the game is certainly up," Charlotte agreed. She looked over Ethan's shoulder toward the wings of the stage. "Arthur?" Arthur nodded once and pulled a small remote control from his tuxedo pocket. He pressed a button. The massive LED screen behind the stage, which had been displaying the golden Kensington logo, flickered and changed. The logo vanished, replaced by a video feed. It was grainy, black and white security footage, dated just 48 hours prior. But the audio was crystal clear. The entire ballroom looked up at the screen. The footage showed a dimly lit booth in a seedy dive bar on the outskirts of the city. Ethan and Sophia were sitting across from a shady-looking man in a leather jacket. Ethan's blood ran cold. He froze, his eyes glued to the screen as he watched himself reach into a bag and place a thick envelope of cash on the table. Audio from the screen echoed through the ballroom. "Make the affidavit look real." Ethan's voice on the recording was unmistakable. "I don't care if you have to invent a clinic or forge a doctor's signature. Just say her mother faked the DNA. We need to humiliate her at the gala." "And make sure it's dated before the will was probated," Sophia's voice added, sharp and clear. "We need to freeze the assets so my dad doesn't lose the building. If we can tie her up in court for a year, we win." The ballroom went deathly silent. The only sound was the hum of the projector fan. Ethan watched himself hand over the bribe. He watched himself seal his own fate. The color drained from his face, leaving him ashen. He looked like a ghost. Charlotte's voice boomed through the speakers again, cold and unforgiving. "You see, Ethan, you forgot one very important detail about the Kensington Empire," she said, stepping out from behind the podium. She walked slowly toward him, her heels clicking on the stage floor. "We own the security firm that handles surveillance for, well, most of the city, including the bar you chose for your little transaction." She stopped inches from his face. The cameras were zooming in, capturing every bead of sweat on his forehead. "You wanted to expose a fraud tonight?" Charlotte asked, her voice low and dangerous. "Congratulations. You succeeded." She turned her gaze to the back of the room. Officers had been waiting. Ethan Reynolds. Sophia had been waiting. "Ethan Reynolds, Sophia Vanguard," the lead officer announced, his voice projecting to the back of the room. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted extortion, and falsifying legal documents." Sophia let out a strangled cry as an officer grabbed her arm, the fake documents spilling from her hands and scattering across the stage floor like confetti. As the handcuffs clicked around Ethan's wrists, the cold metal biting into his skin, he looked up at Charlotte one last time. He searched her eyes for any sign of the wife he had once known, the woman who had loved him unconditionally. He found nothing. There was no love, no hate, just an absolute, chilling indifference. She looked at him as if he were a stranger. "You planned this," Ethan whispered, tears of shock and ruin streaming down his face. "You knew. You let us walk in here." "I knew you'd come," Charlotte replied softly, leaning in so only he could hear. "I just wanted to make sure the cameras were rolling. I told you, Ethan, I'm not a loser anymore." As the police dragged a screaming Sophia and a sobbing, broken Ethan off the stage and out of the ballroom, Charlotte turned back to the stunned crowd. She didn't look flustered. She looked triumphant. She smoothed the velvet of her dress, returned to the podium, and picked up her glass of champagne. The room was still reeling, processing the brutal efficiency of the takedown they had just witnessed. "Now," Charlotte said, raising her glass, her smile dazzling and sharp. Where were we? Ah, yes, the future of Kensington Global. For a second, there was silence. Then, a single person started clapping. Then another. Within seconds, the applause was deafening, a thunderous ovation for the woman who had just proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that she was the true queen of the city. 1 year had passed since the night of the Kensington Gala, a night now referred to in Seattle social circles simply as the coronation. The seasons had turned, washing away the grey, relentless rains of winter and bringing a rare, golden summer to the Pacific Northwest. The city shimmered under the July sun, a beacon of progress and wealth. But 30 miles east, inside the minimum security visiting room of the Monroe Correctional Complex, the world remained colourless, smelling of industrial bleach, stale sweat, and regret. Ethan sat on a cold metal stool that was bolted to the floor, staring at his hands. They were rougher now, the skin dry and cracking, calloused from months of assigned labour in the prison laundry. He turned his palms over, studying them as if they belonged to a stranger. The manicured nails, the soft skin of a man who had never done a day's manual labour, and the heavy weight of the Rolex Submariner were distant memories now, phantom limbs of a life he had amputated with his own arrogance. He wasn't serving a long sentence. 18 months for fraud and conspiracy, thanks to a plea deal his lawyer had scrambled to secure, but the length of time didn't matter. The real sentence wasn't the days he counted down in a 6-by-8 cell. It was the knowledge that waited for him on the outside. Across from him sat his court-appointed attorney, a tired man named Mr. Henderson, who looked as if he would rather be anywhere else. Henderson shuffled through a stack of paperwork, the rustling sound loud in the quiet room. "The parole board is reviewing your file next month," Henderson mumbled, not bothering to make eye contact. "Your behavior has been good. You've kept your head down. If you stay out of trouble, you'll likely be out by Christmas." "And then what?" Ethan asked, his voice sounding hollow, scraped raw from lack of use. Henderson shrugged, finally looking up. "Then you start over. You're young, Reynolds. You have time." Ethan let out a bitter, fractured laugh that died quickly in the sterile air. "Start over? In this industry?" "I'm radioactive, Henderson. I'm not just an ex-con. I'm the man who divorced a billionaire heiress because she was too poor, and then tried to frame her with forged documents when I realized my mistake. I'm a punchline. I'm a cautionary tale taught in business ethics classes from here to Tokyo." The lawyer didn't argue. There was no point in offering false hope. He simply packed his briefcase, snapping the latches shut with a finality that echoed in Ethan's chest. "Just keep your head down, Reynolds. Survive the time. That's the job right now." As Henderson walked away, the heavy steel door buzzing open and clanging shut behind him, Ethan remained frozen. He wasn't ready to go back to his cell yet. He turned his gaze toward the small, mounted television in the corner of the waiting room. It was muted, but the captions were scrolling, and the image was unmistakable. It was a business news channel. The headline flashed in bold, urgent blue letters. "Kensington Global reports record profits, announces new Martha's Hope housing initiative." And there she was, the camera feed cut to a live shot in downtown Seattle. Charlotte stood in front of a gleaming new high-rise, a pair of ceremonial scissors in her hands as she prepared to cut a red ribbon. She looked breathtaking. She wore a tailored cream suit that radiated authority, but her face was soft, glowing with a genuine warmth Ethan hadn't seen in years. Standing beside her, beaming like a proud grandfather, was Arthur Penhaligon. Ethan leaned forward, his heart hammering against his ribs. He read the scrolling ticker at the bottom of the screen. Under the leadership of Charlotte Kensington, the formerly stagnant estate has revitalized the downtown district. The new Martha House will provide luxury standard housing for low-income families, funded entirely by the profits from the commercial sector. When asked about her success, Ms. Kensington credited her late mother for teaching her the value of resilience. Ethan watched the screen, mesmerized and horrified all at once. The memories hit him like a physical blow. He remembered the woman who used to count change on the kitchen counter just to buy him his favorite steak for his birthday. He remembered how she would rub his back after a long day, whispering that he was destined for greatness. He remembered the night at the hospital, how small and defeated she had looked when he handed her the papers. He had held a diamond in his hands, convinced it was nothing but common glass, and he had thrown it into the mud to chase a mirage. On the screen, Charlotte smiled at the crowd, a smile of absolute victory and peace. Ethan couldn't bear it. He turned away, squeezing his eyes shut as the guard approached. "Time's up, Reynolds," the guard grunted. Ethan stood up, his legs heavy. He walked back toward the cage, the weight of his karma heavier than any iron bars could ever be. Miles away, the air was crisp and clean atop the building formerly known as the Apex Tower. It had been renamed the Kensington Spire, a symbol of the new era. Charlotte stood on the private observation deck on the 80th floor. The wind whipped at her hair, but she didn't shiver. She felt warmer than she had in years, fueled by a deep, quiet satisfaction. Below her, the city of Seattle looked like a sprawling circuit board of lights and movement. The executive office behind her was buzzing with controlled activity. Her team was finalizing the paperwork for the acquisition of a rival firm's assets, Robert Vanguard's company. After the scandal, Apex Realty had collapsed, bankrupting Robert and leaving the Vanguard reputation in tatters. Charlotte had bought the remnants of his company this morning for pennies on the dollar. She hadn't done it out of spite or revenge. She had done it because the portfolio was solid and the price was right. That was the difference between the woman she was now and the people who had tried to crush her. They let emotion and ego dictate their moves. She led with logic, tempered by a conscience. The glass door slid open, and Arthur walked out onto the deck. He held 2 crystal glasses of sparkling water with lime. "You should be inside, Madame Chairwoman," Arthur chided gently, though his eyes crinkled with a smile. "The mayor is here for the photo op, and the board is waiting to pop the champagne for the Vanguard acquisition." "Let them wait a moment," Charlotte said, taking the glass he offered. "I was just thinking." Arthur stepped up beside her, looking out over the skyline. "About the past." "About the future," Charlotte corrected, taking a sip of the cold water. "For so long my life was about reacting, surviving the debt, surviving the divorce, surviving the takeover. I spent every day fighting just to keep my head above water. I think today is the first day I'm actually just living." Arthur nodded slowly, his expression solemn. "Your father, Magnus, would have been terrified of you, you know. He was a shark, a brilliant one, but he operated on fear. You operate on something different. You lead with empathy. It makes you unpredictable. It makes you dangerous in a way he never was." "And Mom?" Charlotte asked, her voice softening at the mention of Martha. What would she think of all this? The skyscrapers, the billions? Martha never cared about the buildings, Charlotte. She didn't care about the bank accounts, Arthur said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. She only cared that you didn't let the world harden your heart. She wanted you to have this power, but she was terrified it would change you. Watching you today, seeing you build homes for the poor with the same hand that signed a billion-dollar merger. She would have been very proud. Charlotte looked down at the city streets far below. Somewhere down there, people were rushing, fighting, loving, and losing. She had been one of them. In many ways, she still was. The money had changed her clothes, her address, and her last name, but it hadn't changed the core of who she was. She reached into the pocket of her blazer and pulled out a small, cheap object. It was scratched plastic, faded white with black lettering. It was her old name tag from the diner where she used to waitress. Charlotte. Arthur raised an eyebrow, recognizing it immediately. You still carry that? After everything? It keeps me humble, she said, running her thumb over the raised letters. It reminds me that I can survive on minimum wage, and I can survive on millions. It reminds me that Ethan left this girl because he thought she was nothing, but she was everything. She squeezed the name tag tight in her palm, then dropped it back into her pocket. She took a deep breath, inhaling the rare, sweet summer air. Okay, Arthur, she said, turning back toward the glass doors where the flashing cameras and the future waited for her. I'm ready. Let's go close the deal. She walked back into the light, leaving the shadows of her past on the balcony, finally and completely free. And that is the incredible story of Charlotte Kensington. She went from a heartbroken wife signing divorce papers in a hospital waiting room to the queen of a billion-dollar empire, proving that sometimes the best revenge isn't anger. It's massive, undeniable success. Ethan learned the hard way that when you treat people like disposable objects, you might just be throwing away a diamond. What do you think? Did Ethan deserve a harsher punishment, or is living with his regret the ultimate justice? And if you suddenly inherited $1.3 billion today, what is the first thing you would do? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.